Oh my God. This is Jim Ziegler, the Alpha Dog. And this is the Dawg Pound. I still need some music.
We really do.
I need a
You should
drum
vote from
roll
the
or
audience.
something.
I think we should ask the audience to send
Yeah.
in some requests for our theme song.
Yeah, if you could send us in a theme song and like a walk-on song for each of us, because I'm kind of curious.
I need a walk-on song.
I know.
Because it's so dramatic when I
always
say,
sit and think.
this is the Dawg Pound. You know, and nothing. Okay, the Dawg Pound this week features one of our the mad Russian himself, Max Zanin. How you doing, big guy?
I'm good, Jim. How are you?
You have to. Are you going to have to leave us today?
I might have to, but hopefully not.
Okay, so what would be the reason you would leave us today?
Well, I'm scheduled to testify at a federal court. And
Nobody's surprised.
Hopefully,
by
you
that.
got a good attorney, Max.
In an undisclosed location.
Oh my God! I mean, they're going to blindfold you and take you to some
That's
warehouse,
right.
and
That's right. But listen, nothing stops me from coming on the show. Not even
Okay.
certain cases.
so you're going to testify in an undisclosed location. And does it have? You are the mad Russian. Does it have anything to do with election tampering or?
No.
Okay.
It has to do with automotive retail.
Okay, so it has something to do with the retail car business. Okay. And the queen of BDC, I mean, absolute undisputed expert, Bobbie Herron. Hi, kid.
Hi, you. Thanks for having us.
Oh, man, you're looking great today. I mean, unbelievable clarity on that camera. You are absolutely front and center.
I'm telling you this, the single thing. I'm sexy, successful, sassy, single. It was a good look for me.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to put your phone number up here, like
No. We're not going to do that.
Dating service? I mean, what?
If you're in automotive and you think there's somebody that I would like, let me know. As long as they're not in automotive.
No. As the best friend, I'm going to say, let me know. I'll pre-screen and eliminate, so we don't get any.
She's made some poor choices.
I love good people. That's the thing.
I understand. And one of the most talented female executives in the business, Jennifer Briggs. What's the new name?
Bertrand is the new name.
Jennifer Briggs-Bertrand.
I love how you're hyphenating it. I don't intend to hyphenate it with the Social Security office, but I'll let you do it. So,
Okay.
but I'm doing great. I'm not even officially working today, but would not miss this. And the topic is super interesting. So pardon my casual nature today. I'm just joining you guys so we can geek out and talk about.
Well, Kramer brought the subject up, and I said, "Boy, this is fascinating."
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And Jeremy Lewis, how you doing, big guy?
Doing good, Jim. Hope you guys are. Glad to be here. I love this topic.
Fantastic. I mean, this is our tech genius, and he has a strong retail background. And the general manager, I'm talking about Germain Toyota, Naples, Florida. Brian
Little sleepy
Kramer.
fishing village.
Little sleepy fishing village. How'd your units come out last month?
Last month was a challenge. I mean, the gross, like everybody else, was the wind was at our back. But to answer your question, we sold them all.
Yeah. As long as you sold all of them, that's the right answer. So anyway, Brian, I was talking to you a couple of days ago, and I said, "What's happening in the car business?" And what did you say to me?
Well, I told you that obviously, like everything else these days, it's the craziest times we've ever seen. But we're seeing more wholesale than retail. So some of these cars are getting tossed, like a hot potato. People are taking them to the sale, wholesalers buying them, wholesaling them. It seems like 3 or 4 or 5 times in some cases before they ever get to retail. So I don't know what the true exit point is. I know in some cases, like I was telling you the other day, we had some aged out vehicles, and a couple of them were RAV4s, for instance, 20,000 or 2020 RAV4s with, 10,000 plus miles on them. And we were selling them to rental car companies for $6,000 over the original MSRP.
I saw today a letter to a dealer from Hertz offering to buy and sell inventory, and all of a sudden we're seeing Hertz, Echo Park, Vroom, Carvana, CarMax, all the usual suspects. Even at the physical in-person auctions, they're standing there in the lane with their hand up till their arms cramp. Is this pretty much what you're experiencing?
Yeah, and I'm looking at Hertz right now. I've been kicking myself because they're right across the street from us, and their stock right now is $27 a share. And I bought it at $2 and sold it at $7. So I got a lot of FOMO on that deal. But I think that thing's just warming up, and they're going to rent. I had a gentleman came in today, wanted to rent a vehicle, but he wanted to take it out of state, which we don't do here at the Toyota store. And we've got about 150 rental cars in our fleet currently, and we're going to be putting in more. But I said, what brought you here? And he said, well, every other rental car place in town is out of cars.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're experiencing that during travel, renting a car and then showing up at the airport to get it. And not only is the car you rented not available, they don't call you to tell you, but everybody else is out of cars too. I flew into a very small town a couple of weeks ago, not even a very small town, just a smaller airport. Couldn't get an Uber, couldn't get a Lyft, and couldn't get a rental car. First time that I've experienced that in travel. Last year, I wouldn't even have booked it. I would have just got it when I got there. So it's been a serious issue.
So all of a sudden we got a babe on the sidewalk with hitchhiking with 2 suitcases.
Yeah, I love everybody, so I trust everybody. So I'm like, oh, you're a serial killer? Let's talk about how you should do that a different way. But I need to ride myself. Luckily, I have amazing clients that I can call in the middle of the night and be like, I flew in at 2 a.m. and I need a ride right now. So
okay, so the values are being artificially driven up is what I'm hearing. Brian, is that pretty much what we're saying here?
Well, I think they're doing something different with the commodity. It's, for instance, if they have a 70% or 67% utilization rate, they're going to rent a car 20 days out of 30. So if they're renting a car conservatively at $200 a day, which it seems like it's trending upwards from there. So if you take $20 a day times 20 days, that's what, $4,000. $4,000 times 3 months, you're at $12,000. At $12,000, that you can pay $5,000 over what something's worth real quick and make sense of that. Because we're having a lot of dealers are having inventory sit for 2 to 3 months and making no revenue. These other rental car companies are taking that same commodity, no different than I was telling somebody the other day. If you take Maalox, there's magnesium and there's aluminum to make it, or there's all these other things that people do. The margins on making antacids are significantly higher than if you take that same aluminum and magnesium and make body shop parts.
Okay, so Pepto-Bismol would pay more for magnesium than the car manufacturers.
Well, it's worth more to them. So
Right.
if push comes to shove, no different than the elements in a microchip, maybe, those elements aren't as valuable to normal times to somebody else that's using them for a different purpose. But right now with microchips, as scarce as they are, it skyrockets the price of the materials that go into a microchip. And the same thing with a commodity being a used car. People are doing different things with the used cars than we are. We're not generating revenue for 60 to 90 days. We're trying to make X amount of profit in a short period of time. And we're on a typical linear, way of looking at things. This is the way we've always done it. Hopefully we get a trade. Hopefully we get some finance money. And that, and then the cycle repeats itself. So we don't have to go source more used cars. But if these other gentlemen or women are at Hertz or Enterprise, Avis, you name it, if they're taking that same asset and then they're doing something with it, they're playing chess when we're playing checkers. They're generating $12,000 in the same amount of time we're trying to generate $4,000 with the same commodity.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, does that make sense to you?
Well, it makes sense. I guess I think, with me we do own in the group of 30 companies our own rental car company as well, but we've not been utilizing that on the used car side of things and taking that. But I definitely understand exactly what Brian is talking about. And if you aren't consistent, and even with the shortages, even with everything that's happening today, like I think we've been very stringent in our used car policies and how, I mean, nothing really sits for more than 45 days. But I was doing a little bit of digging to see through, if I could notice some trends, looking at our recent acquisitions. And we don't buy a lot from the auction. I should probably preface that, like less than 13% overall is going to be something that we've purchased at an auction. We really try to stay away from that because while we see a lot of these companies just keeping their hands raised, that's nothing new. Like if your dealership is right down the street from a CarMax, you're used to this. It's just the amounts they're going over are higher than ever before. But we're forced to deal with that years ago, with CarMax coming in and driving up that expense. So I don't know if that makes us better prepared, but I did see a couple of things, but not anything in our market that was concerning other than, maybe they didn't realize there was an issue on the title or there was an accident, so they wholesale flipped it a couple more times. I do know we're being a lot more aggressive in our wholesales because there is an opportunity there. And we're probably stepping up and wholesaling out more than what we would normally do. But actually, we have a used car lot now. We're keeping some of that stuff and putting some recon into it.
Okay, now that's the point. I was working with Lynn Hickey Dodge in 1994. And I don't take credit for what they did. They set the world record retail. I think it was 2,300 and some odd retail units. And the secret for Lynn Hickey Dodge was basically they sold 1,000, 1,400 units almost every month. And they had one month where they set the Guinness Book of World Records. But Lynn Hickey, high school dropout, started as a lot boy, built the biggest dealership in history. And by the way, AutoNation bought that dealership, never sold 100 units again. But anyway, Lynn Hickey Dodge owned Dakota Finance. I mean, not a buy here, pay here. It was a legitimate finance company. And he set his own values on the trades. I mean, whatever it took to make a deal, they would put that money in the trade. They set the Guinness Book of World Records, and they were extremely profitable. So, Jeremy, what did you in your research find out this week?
So, me and Brian have actually had this conversation a few times about, the big disruptors out there putting crazy figures on vehicles and buying cars from the street. So I wanted to see, my personal truck is a 2020 Ram Rebel Crew Cab, loaded up, got everything but the air ride. And I just wanted to see where these, the Vrooms, the Carvanas, the CarMaxes, where they're at today. So I went in and threw my truck in real quick just to kind of see, what they were, pricing it out at. So Vroom came in at $51,976. Okay. I paid.
Let's go back a second. How much did you pay for that truck? How long ago?
I paid about $50 for it 2 years ago. I bought it in June. I'm sorry, about a little over a year ago. So June of 2020 is when I bought this truck. Sticker was like 56. So back then there were still rebates and 0% for forever and all that good stuff going on. So I paid about $50 for it. So Vroom was at $51,976. Right in line with MMR. CarMax was at $50,400. Not bad. The one that kind of shocked me was called Carvana. They came in at $45,774, which is, seems pretty low. So I went in and pulled some figures for retail transactions that had happened in the past, few weeks. And I've got my same truck selling retail for, $54,800, $55,900, $55,300, $56,900, $55,100, just a couple of examples. So if, Carvana were to acquire it for that and they can turn around and sell it for mid-50s, obviously they're making a ton on it. Or they could go and wholesale it at the auction or just one of their dealers in their new wholesale network for $50,000. And the dealer will probably buy it.
Let me ask Brian, Brian, where's all this headed?
Well, the interesting thing is, like what Jeremy was just saying, Carvana has the AI to put proxies on more units than anybody else in the country, so they can be more selective, and they don't have to buy his truck. They can cherry pick, right?
Mhm.
And the where this is headed is that dealers need to get out in front of this thing, and we've got to be.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How
we gotta
how
stop
are
playing
how are we going to
defense.
get in front of it? How?
Well, it's an uncomfortable conversation. We need to stop under allowing big amounts of money. We got to stop over allowing, which, here lately, I know that there's, I get correspondence. A lot of people don't agree with a lot of things that I say, but over allowing on vehicles is a big part of the problem, because unless we are willing to buy it for what we told them we were going to buy it for, because there's a lot of people that do play shell games and they'll show somebody 10 grand more than we did for a car. We need to be able to say, well, we'll buy the car for that. Whether, even if you don't buy one from us, will the other dealer, will the competition do it? And if they're not, you got to ask yourself why. Now, what I've found is that when we just go in front of this and we show the customer what we're willing to pay for the car, and we can let go of this fear and this scarcity mindset, and we can start going after an abundance mindset, and we aggressively pursue the cars that we need, and now we're at a point we don't care what everybody else is putting in the cars. And I used to consume myself with this, that how are they doing this, how are they doing that? When I just finally let go and just said, look, I need these, and I sell them for this. So yeah, maybe I could, a perfect world, I could acquire this percentage of the market, cost the market or whatever, but I just need to get the cars, and whoever has the most cars right now, the right cars, wins. So unless I'm getting enough of the right cars, then it doesn't matter how high they go or how many there is. If you're not in the game and wait until this goes down, it's like waiting to go to work until gas prices come down. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, but I think there's so many people right now that, like I think, Brian, the last time you were on, we were talking about this, that are situationally successful. They don't know the right cars. So they're also helping to feed this issue where they're just raising their hand and they're feeding into this beast and this machine. Again, we all know I'm the accountant in me will never let me do that. I'm always looking for those most cost effective ways. But even now, I think the biggest challenge for stores that are just now starting to wake up and realize this is going to put them in a super tight point. I guess the thing for me is I'm always looking to buy from within. We're purchasing, but we're out of a lot of our new cars to be able to do any, pull aheads or owner buybacks, unless I can flip people to CPO, in which I've got to massively prospect service. But I think our next phase is as a group is looking at, some different technologies to centralize our buying from private individuals. I feel like I know we always have room to grow, but if you're reliant upon the auction, it's going, even with today's conditions, you're going to hit a point of constriction in profitability very, very soon. Because if you're out there just raising your hand, and you're raising your hand because you want something, not the right car, like Brian said, it has to be something that you can flip. And I think that's something that's different for us. We're targeting that. We're looking at sales data. We're looking at searches. We're looking at what's happening on the site, and we're looking at market data to know what can we flip. But we also have the power of a group. And I know, Brian, you do too. I don't know what your guys' policy is. We open it up to an internal auction amongst our stores after it, hits a certain point, which of course in today's conditions, we're not really getting there, but the numbers look great right now. When I look at our overall used car numbers, but if you're not prepared and you're sitting there, we're going to run into it now. What are they saying? The new car situation is not going away. So used cars are going to continue to get more and more aggressive, and it's insane because we have consumers.
Okay, now you just said it. The used car market is getting more aggressive.
Yeah.
When it was Lynn Hickey back in the 90s, he was able to set the world record, Guinness Book of World Records, for unit sales, because he would put whatever it took in a trade-in to make a deal. He owned the finance company. He didn't care.
I'd be so careful with that, though. You end up with a lot that's underwater a lot of times. In that situation, not, but we talk about this and we forget that, we say supply and demand because that's a common approach to how we talk about things. But what we're really talking about is a price equilibrium. And that's basically, right, when a product exchange occurs between two people, the agreed upon price is called an equilibrium. And that balances with supply and demand in the market. So we all know that right now we're talking about, like, is it a fair market price for consumers? Is it this? And the truth is, a market price is not necessarily a fair price. It's just the outcome. So can we say that something's artificially
It's
inflated
the
right now?
outcome,
We can't.
Bobbie. The outcome.
It's the outcome. It does not guarantee total satisfaction on either part.
Let me jump in on that a second. When Lynn Hickey was putting whatever figure it took to make a deal, I was looking at that and say that is slap ass crazy. That I mean, and he said we ignore the market. We do whatever it takes to make a deal.
Well,
Brian, jump in on that a second.
I think that the problem isn't the cars that Carvana is putting all the money in, or Vroom's putting all the money in, or CarMax is putting all these crazy numbers in. I think that dealers should be more concerned about the price matches they don't see, because you don't ever see a price match of somebody that has 70,000 miles on a 2018 whatever from one of those lenders. We get stuck with those things. They go, okay, average on that. Yeah, we'll take your number because Carvana, like Jeremy was saying, is way low. They know exactly what they want to step up on, what they don't want to step up on. They're very strategic, and their AI algorithm is so fast that we get hung up on this average percentage of cost to market, which is still subjective at best, because it depends on what's in the set, what's out of the set. Jeremy and I've talked about that at length. But as you're looking at this, the ones that they sell, the ones that they put all the money in, the ones where you're like, how did they get there? I had one of a 2013 FRS with 30,000 miles or 27,000 miles. And I passed on the one. I said, Carvana, they can keep that. And then on the next one, I said, I'm not doing it again. And we sold it for $5,000 over NADA, now JD Power. I don't know how or why the customer ended up finding more money down, but they wanted that car. And how many 2013s with 27,000 miles are you going to find out there? They just don't. Those are the ones they pay, and they pay up for the unicorns, and they lay off of all the average or below average cars. They don't. they really lay off on bad Carfax cars, and they let us pick over the scraps. We haven't bought a car at the auction since Wendell Hardy started with us. And that was 3 years ago.
How's Wendell doing?
Doing amazing.
Well, I think that an important part of this that we have to remember is that when the demand or the supply changes, the equilibrium changes. And so regardless of what you're doing as a dealer right now, you have to have a strategy, because nobody knows when it's going to drop, and it's going to drop. So we don't know when that's going to happen. You have to have an intentional strategy going into this quarter, going into the first quarter of next year, on how you're going to balance the accounting of these units and what you're going to do to maintain the levels that you've now gotten everybody to in the store. And it needs to be realistic instead of celebrating like it's a $7,000 gross, we're killing it. It's a $15,000 gross, we're killing it. I got these 5 cars. I care less about the volume that somebody delivers right now. I'm not impressed by your gross right now or your volume. I'm impressed by how many units you took in that weren't going to be a car that was traded in, and what your strategy is going to be to survive what this is going to look like over the next year and a half, when the millions of cars sitting everywhere flood our market and everybody's values drop.
I don't think we're going to see millions of cars flooding the market. That's the big problem. I think that people think about. You look at the Hertzes and these other.
Now wait a minute. Why do you not
what
think
do you think's going to happen to all those cars, Jeremy? You think they're just going to go to like the Neverland of fairy place?
Oh yeah, they're out there, but keep in mind. All right, so like you talk about Hertz, these other rental car companies having to go out and buy used cars. So you got to keep in mind, the OEMs do not just stock the franchise dealership lots. They also stock all the rental car companies, and they stock.
I'm so glad you said that. So what happens? Hold on, I have a question. Let's pretend that tomorrow the OEM released all these 2020s that are sitting on, fields everywhere, and they sell them to Hertz.
And you are in Detroit.
Well, I'm close to Detroit.
You can see all the storage lots that are overflowing with brand new F-150s, brand new Silverados.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I love
brand new.
Said,
I'm sure there's a brand new Tacomas and Tundras sitting somewhere.
So hold on a minute. Let's dig into what Jeremy just said, because Jeremy, you're not wrong. Is the OEM going to flood the rental car companies? Yes. What happens at the end of the term that they're flooded with every single time? Let's say they do a 2-year kind of deal. All of a sudden, our auctions are flooded with those cars, and the value of that particular make and model drops. It is going. These cars aren't going to like.
It's going to be a trickle effect, because here's what's going to happen. So they're going to. First thing the rental car companies are going to do, they are going to start offloading what they had to buy at the auctions. So that's going to bring it down some. But with what they have on the ground right now, last number I saw, they still don't have enough built right now to restock all the rental cars, all the government fleet contracts that they're past due on delivering right now, and all the dealership, inventory. What they have on the ground right now, plus their current capacity.
I'm trying not to agree with you.
I'm trying not,
Jeremy,
No.
I'm trying not to agree with you. I'm
Let's
trying
pretend
not
it's
to agree
January.
with you,
Well,
but
don't
you know,
just yet.
I thought
Don't
this
just
earlier
yet.
this year. Earlier this year, everybody said, "Oh, this is going to be done by the end of this year." And I said, "No."
Let's say, let's say
early.
January 2023. Let's say everything just all of a sudden is good, right? All these things that are out chilling on lots, these millions of cars that we didn't have chips for, are going to contracts, they're going to used cars, they're going to blah, 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 wherever. But production still exists for what was already being produced. And KBB just reported that there's a 13% decline in used car sales this month. Is that supply and demand? Is that because we can't find enough cars for the buyers? The OEMs aren't going to stop making cars because they have to go out and stick chips in.
okay, there's a 13% decline in used car sales this month. Why is that, Brian? Let me ask Brian a second.
Well, there's an increase in the amount of wholesale.
Right.
Oh, how did
So-
I know that was going to come up?
So
And the person who's on
Go ahead,
this
Brian. I'm
Facebook
gonna jump
user
in after.
talking about packs and charging to the shop, I think that person is dead right. But I also think along the lines of what we're all saying, it doesn't change what a car is worth. It doesn't matter if we're wholesaling it, retailing it. There has to be a culture of winning the trade no matter what. That's what these other competitors we're talking about have.
Well, he's talking about the packs. I think he's talking about how that's a handicap for dealers because we have the packs and we have to charge the shop. And I think that's what he's saying.
But it doesn't matter if we have the packs or you don't have the packs.
No.
And we have packs.
No, it doesn't. No.
And I agree that it does affect the way that your retail strategy, but it shouldn't affect your acquisition strategy. Because CarMax and Carvana, their wholesale volume was up 41% of their revenue came from wholesale units on cars they bought from us. And who are they wholesaling them back to? Car dealers. So they bought the trades that we wouldn't step up on, and then they wholesale them back to us for what it says on their proxy for $1,400 profit.
So
Jennifer, plywood.
ultimately, here's what I think this boils down to, you guys. And this is why I think, and yes, I'm not going to deny supply and demand and market constrictions and things like that. But ultimately, if you actually stop, and Brian, you just said this, they just want to win at the auction. Get out of your ego. Do not need to win there. Where you need to win is on the bottom line of your financial statement. And if you are acquiring vehicles with ego and walking away from something because you don't want to step up on a trade, maybe because you actually don't know that's the right car for you, you need to go back to school. And this is a course I teach at Northwood. I've done this session before. I did it for driving sales, executive club. It's about being smart and actually stocking things that you can turn in 2 weeks. And this is like from 5 years ago. Guys, this is not new. When you look at your inventory as a capital investment and not as an old school, I'm going to win this. I like this. I like that, whatever. A dollars and cents game. Make the investments on what you're going to turn quickly. And the reason why we're seeing such an increase in wholesale, if I don't have any carrying costs and I can take that money and I can put it right back to the bottom line immediately, why would I not? And that's what you're seeing these bigger disruptors do. So we need to get on board and look at this as a capital investment and take your ego all the way out of it and figure out what you need to do, what you need to acquire. And you know what? If you can't turn it, get off that capital, wholesale it, liquidate it, and go out and get the ones that you can retail out of.
There are only 200 million licensed drivers in the United States. And
Jim,
we've been.
I have an
the Russians in here. Okay.
I have an unpopular opinion.
No shit.
No way.
So to Jeremy's point, that Carvana is offering for his truck way less than others. And I think they're doing it not because of any AI or anything else. It's because they reached a point of consumers' trust. And that's why they can charge more on retail and pay less on wholesale. Because the consumer is just willing to pay for transparency and ease of doing business. Unfortunately, over the decades of mistreating customers and not being completely transparent, consumers don't have trust when a dealer says, I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars for this car, they always think there's a catch. Either I have to buy another car, or when I get there, they're going to do an inspection and say that this car is a stage 4 cancer, and we have to pay you $7,000 less than the online form said. So I think that's a factor also. Another factor that works against many dealers is the fact that they've been using, I don't want to say, V-Auto, but let's be honest, they've been using V-Auto for too long, right? And V-Auto stops you from thinking and using, the part of the brain that is responsible for reasonable thinking, right?
I don't think that's accurate.
It's pretty accurate.
I don't think that's accurate.
Oh.
Understand how
Jennifer, you're brain dead. You're brain dead. Max just said it.
No.
Well, no, you don't need to instigate those two. They already don't agree.
No. But hang on, that's the difference. Max is in reinsurance. I've been a used car director. So I think the problem is, Max, is that people that don't understand how to manage their investment. V-Auto is a tool just like dealer sockets, product, an inventory management system is a tool. You could do the same dang thing with any of them. It is about
Max says you don't know what you're talking about because you're a girl.
Oh, well.
Audience, Jim likes to instigate.
That was humor, folks. That was humor. That was humor.
And listen, guys, at the end of the day, there'll be a correction. There'll be a correction, and a lot of wholesalers will get wiped out. Right? I mean, I think we're all old enough to remember 2008 and mortgage-backed securities, right? It's the same thing. Whoever's going to be holding the bag last is going to be out of business. There'll be correction, and Bobbie is right. Prices will drop, and then it's going to come down to your ability to manage under stress, right? And right now, everybody's high-fiving each other, right? Laughing all the way to the bank. But I guarantee you that most dealers are not like Brian, and they're not thinking 2 steps ahead. Right, and there'll be a lot of blood on the street.
And you can quantify, Max, what you're talking about. If you take a look in V-Auto and you take a look at our book and you select any vehicle that you want in your inventory, and you look at our book, then look at JD Power, then look at KBB, and then look at MMR retail, and you'll see that bubble swelling up. And there's no logical explanation as to why MMR retail is that much higher than our book retail, other than that there's multiple sources of data, and you've got to use, your past experience and rely on different sources of data in order to come to a conclusion. Because there's a lot of these used car retailers are advertising in ways that are non-traditional that we've never seen before, and that's what's causing all that disruption in terms of the $4,000 to $5,000 variance between all those different sources.
I'm still going back in my head to Lynn Hickey putting all the money in the cars, and I mean all the money in the cars. I'm still thinking about he was one of the most profitable dealers in history. So
well,
put them all
profitable
the right
through
cards.
but through which department? The finance company? Because is that where he was profitable? I mean,
he was selling that finance off.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually on the retail of the units, but selling the paper.
No, he could sell the paper to a third party source that would manage the paper and own the paper, so it didn't hurt him to put too much money in the cars.
Right. Well, that's where the strategy comes in, right? If you're buying if you're putting all the money into an AB unit that you're going to move quickly and you're going to get all the money for, it's fine. And if you're putting all the money into something that's going to come back through the finance company, it's fine. And it was also a different time than what we're dealing with now. The wholesale prices are going to stay high through the end of next year at the earliest. But
it's going to go well into 22. But let me ask Brian a question. Brian, now, we got these inflated values on cars right now. How are the finance companies stepping up?
Well, what we're finding is that people put more money down than they used to put down, and it probably was there the whole time, but we just didn't ask for it. And now, if it's the right car, people are finding money down that they normally wouldn't find, so that they're in a better equity position, no differently than on a house. Or
who's been teaching that for 30 years? I mean,
but you know what? Drive time isn't that much different than the way you're describing Lynn Hickey, right? I mean, they step up on the right cars, that they looked at the total body of work. And if you think about drive time, they're selling financing and they buy the commodity in order to achieve that. And it's
Yeah.
really not much different.
It really isn't. But you just brought up a point. Consumers have the money. I've been teaching that for 30 years, and I have absolutely put dealerships on the map because we got the money from the consumers. And for years, our management's been swearing the consumers didn't have the money. They've got the money.
They
And
were
that's
just
probably why the
afraid to
bubble's not
ask.
going to. It's not going to pop as bad as everybody thinks, because everybody says that what's going to happen to all these people that are paying $5,000 over MSRP or whatever. It's not going to be as bad as everybody thinks, because we're forcing equity positions out of that, because they've also got tons of equity in their trade that they're rolling into these other, artificially inflated prices.
So anyway,
how much
down
leasing during this time as an industry? The leasing market, I think, needs to be so much stronger right now than it is. It's silly to me that it's not being promoted as hardcore as it should be, so that we can pull people back in, so that we do have the opportunity to buy that vehicle back out at the end. But I just went through searching for vehicles for both of my children, whose both cars were a total loss within the last 3 months, and they're not buying expensive cars. We're buying like $8,000 to $10,000 cars, but I just spent $8,500 on a car that should have been $3,500. But the insurance company for the car that should have been $15,000 gave me $6,000. And in the past, I wouldn't have put the money down, because I would have done a low interest rate and I would have earned credit for them. And this time I said, I'm so sick of looking for a car for you that I don't care how much this car costs or what I have to put down. Just get a car and stop driving mine. And I think a lot of people are feeling like that right now. Yeah.
So I was poking around, and I'm coming back to Jeremy's little research project that he did. What I find incredibly interesting is when I look at Carvana, I think so they have 7.7% of the inventory they have listed. They currently have just under 40,000 units listed on their website right now. 7.7% are trucks.
Yeah,
So if we start looking at how they've got the inventory segmented, it looks like they're hedging against fuel prices in how they're stocking their vehicles. So they decided not to step up on your truck like the other ones did. I mean, just looking at the mix.
Wait a second. 7% of their inventory is trucks?
Correct. They currently have 3,074 trucks in stock on their website. Out of that, 39,879 cars listed, which is a 7.7% of the inventory being trucks. There's 13,507 in sedans. I was just kind of going through and segmenting to see where they have their assets, their capital invested. And it appears they have their capital invested in higher MPG vehicles currently.
And also, if you look at the dollar value, the dollar amounts, they tend to be lower dollar amounts, but they've never been a big truck buyer. Honestly, I'm not real shocked by their number. They've never been ones to stock a lot of big trucks. I don't think they'll fit in the vending machine very well, honestly.
No, probably
they do pay up on Tundras and Silverado 1500s. They'll pay $4,000, $5,000 over MSRP for a Tundra.
Yeah.
Then they sell them in 2 to 3 days. They have it down to a science. You look at their shareholder report. They sell a Jetta in seconds. They measure the amount, less than 1 minute it takes them to sell certain Jettas and certain Accords. And they know
that's what I just bought my kid, and I searched the entire country for a Jetta SEL. The entire country. They were gone. Boom. Done.
So Brian, that brings up a really perfect conversation on days to sold, not just for inventory, but I'm going to bring this in, and I know we always do this, but also looking at your advertising sources, because your advertising sources are what is going to help you also source your acquisitions and trades and things like that. So when you start looking at it, we're talking about capital investment. Time is money. And it's so funny. Everybody's like, oh, no, this goes back to my very first job ever when I was waiting tables. I needed to turn those tables so that I could make more money. Your inventory is the same way. Your team's time working these internet leads are the same way. So if you're not analyzing your inventory and building an acquisition strategy around days to sold.
That's what Brian's here talking about.
Right.
Brian's one of the most educated retailers in the country. Yeah. So are you.
Well, that's interesting, because to the audience, not to Brian, just in relation to, that's exactly it.
You guys, it's just get in there. You have the data. The problem is, again, we don't take the time to invest in our teams. We're promoting people, and it's awesome that Brian's store has him and that he has been able to put together the team to make sure that their acquisition is tight and they're turning the way that they've sat in place. But for the old school stores, right, where we're not investing in training, I'm sorry, I don't think a used car manager should be your buyer. That's just my own personal thing. The way we fail to teach them how to manage capital, it doesn't set them up for success. We teach them, okay, here, you're going to go to auction, you're going to buy these cars, right? You were great on the floor. We're going to promote you, whatever. But we're not investing in our team so that they know how to manage our money. And that is a big mistake. And especially in times like this, it's going to bite a lot of dealers.
But that's what makes them old school, right? That's what makes them old school. They're now willing to learn, right? And the old school guys, are experiencing the best time of their lives. I mean, they look at these mind-blowing gross and net profits, right? And they have a corrupting effect, right? They make them lazy. They definitely are not investing in any type of training, and they're just riding this gravy train. And that's why I think, dealers like Brian and you, Jennifer, you're going to come out smelling like roses, when the pendulum
That's the plan.
Right.
I think that there's a lot more to what you just said, Jennifer, in terms of the time tax on associates. And a lot of people, the solution is always, we just need more leads. And more leads does not necessarily always mean more sales. And as we track the radius away from this dealership, as we go to 5, 10, 25 miles out, the closing ratio, there's a law of diminishing return. And when your salespeople are working all these 50-mile out leads, and the closing ratio, even though they're putting their best foot forward and they're following up in the exact same way, if they don't feel that winning and they don't get addicted to that winning, then they start thinking that the majority of the time that people aren't going to buy. Whereas if you tighten up that radius and take care of your own market, your own backyard,
local SEO, SEO.
Right.
Oh my God, for sure.
And
Well, JMA just put out a report recently that said the employee turnover rate in automotive right now is 46%, which that's on average. That's an all-time high because we're not separating men, women, leaders, salespeople. That turnover is unsustainable.
Actually, we were at 66%. Isn't that lower?
No, we were separated out by salespeople versus leaders and then men versus women, different positions. It's 46% across the industry right now, which they're saying is at the highest. Their report said previously it was 41. I don't know that that's fact. I like to go off the NADA report, but I mean, I do think in general that it's
that's indicative of the entire market, not just the car market. They can't even get dishwashers for $25 an hour at the restaurant.
Right, but
turnover.
It matters.
Turnover is predictable. Turnover is predictable. I mean,
that's a high rate.
Nobody can get help. I mean, our restaurants have absolutely cut down on their hours because they haven't got people to work the hours.
Yeah, but
so I can see where turnover in the car dealerships would also increase.
It is. And short of pissing off every restaurant owner, because the thing I'm about to say is not all of it, but one thing. You've been paying waitresses and waiters $2.70 an hour and rely on tips for a long time.
What do you expect?
Going to 15 feels like a big jump, but this is the service industry in the middle of a pandemic. If you're looking around at why you can't get people, it might be time to reevaluate.
I didn't mean to piss off the restaurant owners here. I mean, I just making a point.
I'm just going to say it, and it might be time. I want to reevaluate the work-life balance.
I want to circle back and tie in what Bobbie's comment was to what Brian had just said, and about burning out your team and making sure that you're setting them up for success in this current condition. And it's crazy, right? You think about it. If you have a BDC, you don't have a BDC, right? Everybody who gets paid off of gross is like, we don't care. We're still making money. But your BDC, unless you're super old school, is not getting paid off of gross. And so they're not getting the units. And you've got people who are nervous. But in these times, if you aren't calculating and looking at the days to sold, days to contact, if you're not evaluating those things to make sure that you're setting your team up for success, regardless of who they are, whether they're sales or managers or your BDC, who I think we're seeing so much turnover in those departments right now because we are not adjusting to make sure those folks are still getting paid. And if you have one, that's the first impression a customer has of your dealership. So you're going to let your first impression, most important impression, just twist in the wind while everybody else is getting fat and rich on the circumstance, right? Messed up. But ultimately, back back to the days sold. If you're buying it so that you can turn it quickly, and honestly, I don't care what you pay for it. If you could retail out of it in 7 days, wonderful. Retail out of it in 7 days or wholesale it in 2, right? Don't sit on capital investment. Don't sit on money that could be making you money. That's business 101. That's not complicated. But if you're going to be able to keep the team that you've got and try to optimize on these things, then start looking at your advertising sources by days to sold. Find those ones that turn fast so that your team can make more money in a shorter period of time. If you focus in on that, all the rest of your metrics will magically fall in line. It's amazing.
But Jennifer, here's the devil's, argument. The longer I sit on my used car inventory, the more it appreciates. I don't need to turn it in 2 days. If I turn it in 22 days, most likely I will make more money.
Oh, she's gonna smack you
I
virtually.
disagree.
Feel it.
I don't think so.
No.
No.
Max, Jennifer says you're full of it. I agree with her.
Now, certain
Only
units,
if you look at the numbers, a Honda Accord is worth more today than it was worth yesterday. And it will be worth more the day after tomorrow. It's an appreciating asset at this point.
it is.
Jeremy, jump in there. Jeremy.
I got a couple of things. So first thing, Jim, earlier you said used car manager and buyer should be the same person. If your pay plan is set up correctly, they'll manage the capital correctly. I promise you, because that's how mine.
That's not what she's saying.
No, they are 2 separate jobs. They're 2 functions, and asking one person to do that.
I love this. Now Jennifer says Jeremy's full of crap. Let's see here. Okay.
Well, as an ex-used car manager,
Hang on just a
world.
minute, because we're not seeing who's posting the comments. For some reason today we can't see the names, so I just looked up.
Well, they're in a group.
Yeah. Dave Bentley. Old car guys get it done no matter what anyone says. I'm in a country Ford dealer and we're doing 7 and 9 per copy. I'm not saying change isn't good, but I take offense to people looking down on older car guys or old school car guys. Not sure anyone here is saying that. I just wanted to clarify real quick because I don't know which comment that came from. When we say old school car guys, we mean the strategy that is used. And you are absolutely right that there are a lot of times where that old school strategy does in fact work depending on your market and where you're at. But when you teach an old car guy new tricks, that's a powerful move. Because I agree with you that
you can't teach old guys new stuff.
That's right.
That's not true. That's what we're doing on here. That's not true. That's what we do. But I will tell you this:
you got old people in the car business don't learn anything. Bobby,
old school car guys know how to close.
Bobby, old people in the car business don't learn anything.
That's not true. I teach them that all the time. I teach old guys new tricks all the time.
I think you actually, if you can show, and for whomever that is, and we're sorry because we can't see you. When I say old school, let's remember I'm old school too. Like I used to walk around with the books in my back pocket as well. So it's not that I'm saying that if you've been around a long time, what I'm saying is that if you could learn to leverage some of the information that's available and make business decisions on investing your inventory and combine that with your knowledge and wherewithal, that is a disruptor in your market.
Listen, I'm just going to say I don't believe that an old school guy made this comment. Okay?
Well, because he's out here.
An old school guy would have a thicker skin.
Right.
No, because an old school guy
no. And I don't like old people in the car business. They can't learn anything. I mean, when I said that, my God, I'm 74 years old.
Right.
I mean, come on.
I specialize in translating this stuff and educating our teams. And that's what I say. My specialty is marrying new school technologies with old school sales tactics. And there is a marriage there. And that optimization between the two, or the symbiotic relationship, is what we're talking about. Facebook user who posted at 14:46 minutes, right? It is taking what you've got that a lot of these new school folks will never be able to learn and marrying that with the information. It makes you lethal. And trust me, I know, because I'm old school and I learned how to do it. And I don't know, I mean, the track record seems to be proving itself time and time again. So when you take that old school person and you can utilize those skills, but show them how to leverage data about their own market, their own stores, and make better investments.
Well, and
Great.
and that's 100%. And right, like a lot of people, I'll just do a 2-second thing here, okay? A lot of people don't realize this. I get on here and I talk shit every week about what people should be doing, and I say things like old school dealers. I'm 40 years old and I've been in this industry since I was 18. And this is always what I've done. I come on as BDC because I understand supply and demand and what a dealership needs inside of it. But let's not forget, I have been a GM, a sales manager, a finance manager, a BDC manager, a marketing director, an educator, and I still pound the pavement every other day with dealers to prove that what I'm teaching you is legit. So when I say old school, I feel like I can because I am. And the new tricks I learned came from that. And 74 years old, right? I'm gonna be there too, but this is the industry that I know. So when I say to you, like, this is an old school technique, believe that I'm not saying it out of judgment. I'm saying it out of observation. And I'll teach you how to do new stuff. And so will a lot of people, but I don't want somebody to be able to think that we're negative in that way.
Bobbie, pineapple.
I'm hungry, thanks.
Pineapple. Oh my God.
Thank you, Max.
It looks like I didn't even notice. Looks like we lost Brian Kramer.
We did. We lost Brian.
Well,
oh my gosh.
Real quick, when we talk about, since Brian dropped off, I'll say this. So one thing he's done really well at his store is put in a process very similar to the Carvanas and the Vrooms, to where if a customer wants to get a trade figure on their vehicle, they can do so through their site, and it's not a instant cash offer or like that. It's a true site that is geared towards acquiring those vehicles from the street, from the consumers who might not be in the market to buy a car. Because Carvana, these guys have shown that consumers are willing to sell you their cars straight out if you give them an opportunity to do so.
Especially right now.
Yeah, and there's so many stores that don't do that or have any process in place to be able to do that. And I highly suggest every dealer go out, find some type of partner, or have someone build it for you. Even let it sit on his own URL so you can advertise it, whatever the case may be. But have it so consumers will try to sell you their cars without them having to come in and fight for you to get a trade figure, or you try to throw the keys on the roof like the old school days.
Oh, wait a second now. I don't ever remember throwing somebody's keys on the roof. Now, come on.
Oh, I know. I have not thrown them, but I have climbed up and retrieved them for a customer.
I have hit them shadily.
Oh, I've never done that. Okay, now one thing I want to point out that Brian brought up earlier, that he said drive time was much like Lynn Hickey. Well, drive time is owned by Carvana.
That's right.
Which we missed that point. Jennifer, do you think there is a correlation between drive time and Carvana as far as what they're doing with these units?
Do I think there's a correlation between huge conglomerates making investments in each other and sharing data across the space? Is that a little bit suspicious? 100% I do. Do I think it's ever going to stack up in our favor as dealers? No. Because
you got to remember that the principal owner of Carvana and Drive Time is a convicted felon.
I think that it's in our current market conditions. I think that a dealer should be very smart on where they allow their units to show up, and how it's kind of like the movie Sleeping with the Enemy, I guess. And maybe it's because I'm from a hyper competitive market altogether to begin with. Like I only ever. The only speed I have is shoestring budget, going at it as fast as you freaking can to get as many units up. So for me, I just would never allow that in. I wouldn't participate with these folks. There are so many plays happening and investments going on with vendors you're probably paying to list your inventory, while the people who actually own those companies are the ones driving up the expense at the auction on you. Like, think about where you're putting your money and how it's affecting the rest of your investments.
Jeremy, jump in on that.
It's a great point. Me and Kramer had that same conversation about why Auto does not show Carvana or the Carfax or CarMax listings. They have the data; it's there. They'll send it to you in an Excel spreadsheet. but they don't show it in the competitive set. And that kind of points back to the, Jim was making about using your inventory management tool. Today, if I were in a store today, I would have Viato and Inventory Plus running side by side because neither one of them gives you all the data.
None of them give you all the data. Now, Brian, I was just pointing out that Drive Time is owned by Carvana. You brought up Drive Time earlier. How much data is being shared across the board with those companies?
That's a very good question. So the one's publicly held.
Yes, it is.
I believe it's privately held. So who knows how much is technically, according to, the shareholders report, not much, but I mean, I'm sure that there's some sharing of learning and efficiencies that have to bleed over into both. I mean, the fact Carvana is really quickly turning into a fintech more than it is a used car retailer.
Yep.
And I think that's where their revenue is going to keep coming off of, and it's just going to be like a mega version of Drive Time. Drive Time is going after whatever they can buy to deliver a certain payment, and they use a commodity as a way to get there. But I mean, buy here, pay here's are doing the same thing with a lot of these cars. I mean, there's so many different crazy things that are happening, like geometrically with used cars and ways that we haven't ever looked at. Used car leasing. I mean, there's just so many crazy things that people are doing with used cars that I think it's going to take a lot longer for the.
See, but that is old school. Used car leasing is old school. We used to do that all the time before the market crashed back in 08 and 09 when
we did it when we were competitors.
Oh yeah, we did a lot of it. That's rather before we opened our buy here, pay here lot at the first group that I worked at. That's what we did with all of our subprime customers. We had our own used car leasing company, and we'd throw them into short-term leases, and so, but that went away after the market crash, after the recession in 08 and 09. Now, of course, if you have highline stores, you're probably still doing some of it now. A lease is all about the residual at the end of the term. So long as it pencils, I mean, it never went away. It's just not everybody has been around long enough to remember that everybody used to do used car leasing. It was normal.
Well, even used car leasing. What about new car leasing? How much new car leasing are we doing? As we get back into better times,
right?
Brian,
if I had more cars,
if you had more cars,
we're still at 40%, and it's saving us. But in terms of how many people are going full term, 2% maybe, because nobody's even lasting that long. There's so much equity that we just keep on pulling people out and putting them into new leases.
Well, I bailed out of my lease on an Audi, for heaven's sake.
I love leasing.
There's your walk-off song.
No, that's my cell phone. I forgot to turn it off.
I love
leasing,
but I come from a heavy lease market.
Geographically, because where I am in Northeast, leasing is it. We're always
that's where with us, yeah.
And you can go to a highline store, let's say an Audi, and you would be probably over 90% leasing. In a Lexus, you'd be over 70%. In a Honda, over 60%.
Yeah.
This is just what people are trained to do in our area.
Well,
that is at the desk, Max. And I think for me, that was a big thing. When I left Michigan and came down here to Indiana, we went from 70% lease penetration up there to come down here where we're barely scratching 15 if I'm lucky. And it's been a goal to try to improve it. But if you're, and I know people who are in, Texas, and they're like, we can't lease anything. I said, no, you don't know how to present a lease. That's your problem. If you
pay plans aren't designed to be aligned with that.
Right.
And they don't think they think they have to sell service contracts in order to hit their grid, and they don't realize that they can sell their products on leases.
Yeah. If you can't convince a customer to take a lower payment on a vehicle, then you got a problem. But every single one of my desking systems, if I have say in that store, even if we are not increased, if our lease penetration isn't great, we're presenting them side by side. Now, again, if we had the inventory, but it does suck that we don't have that penetration because we'd have a little bit more. And I think we're doing better than other people, or other groups or individual points, but could always be better.
But now we've gotten into the used car shell game. And it's one of those things about how far can we drive this market? Because as Bobbie pointed out, there is going to come a point, and I know she said Jeremy was full of crap, and maybe he is, but still.
I did not. I respect Jeremy.
Maybe he is, but the truth of the matter is, I agree with Bobbie on that. It is going to crash. I mean, there's going to come a point when the manufacturers are going to flood the market with inventory, and the rental companies, nobody's going to absorb as much inventory as going to be flooded into the market. And our salvation is leasing.
100%.
Leasing has always been our salvation because we have a finite term on leasing. We know exactly when they're coming out of it. And, they're not going to be up. There's no such thing as an upside down person in a lease because in 3 years they're out of it. 3.5 years they're out of it. And unfortunately, as far as this show goes, we're out of it too. It's we've done an hour. Brian, was this as good for you as it was for me?
It was. I love iron sharpens iron. So I like just spitballing with everybody on this panel.
It's a great panel. Jeremy, I'm sorry that Bobbie insulted you.
It's all good.
Jeremy,
We're all family. We're all family.
we have
She's
to
like
challenge
that.
each other. We can't grab.
There you go.
Okay, Max. Thank you for your unpopular opinions.
Right. And I can take it. I mean, I can dish it out too.
Okay, and Jennifer Briggs, brilliant as always. Thanks for doing a little research on this.
Hey,
thing.
I tell you what, I'm looking at the terms and condition privacy policy on the hidden site map on the Drive Time website right now. It's
I'm
interesting.
not surprised.
Really? Well, we'll have this subject once again.
I should post the link.
And Bobbie Herron, always glad to see you. I think we need to apologize to Jeremy when we get off.
Oh,
All good.
Jeremy and I have been friends for a very long time, and I don't think that Jeremy would love me as much as he does if he knew that I wouldn't challenge him when I don't agree. And that's the same respect I have for him. Real quick, I was going to tell everybody pro tip, just fast. If you're a VIN Solutions user, now is the time for you to start using your wish list and really using it as a store. Get with your PM on it so that you are stocking inventory that you need and not what you desire. Get that implemented. Reach out if you have questions or call in.
Okie
And for new
doke.
cars as well.
Yes, exactly.
yeah. Now's the time it makes sense for new cars. In the past, it didn't, but now it does.
Now it does.
Okay, guys, everybody wave bye to the audience.
Bye.